Welcome back to Scavenger Workshop. We are going to do a tutorial on how to prep these 3D printed parts so that way they look completely clean. There's no print lines. I'm going to show you guys how to sand them with an orbital sander. I wanted to do it on this piece because it has a lot of detail, but I realized it would take a really long time and it would make the video go on. So I decided to do it on the smaller piece that comes off the edge here. Okay, so normally you guys would see some fancy CGI in the background, you know, with the green screen, but I wanted to show you guys that there's going to be no tricks, there's no fake photography. It's all going to be just raw recordings so you guys can see exactly how to do this. All right, so let's go. Welcome back. This piece right here is the shoulder for the Fallout T-60. As you can see, it's already been glued together. It's got some really heavy layering right here. I dropped it, cracked it right here, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the different things I've done and different products that I use when I'm finishing these parts. Okay, aside from the generic primer that you usually buy, I use self-etching primer and paint. You're going to need this stuff here. It's called Bondo Glazing putty. So this stuff dries fairly quickly, and it's very easy to sand off. So this is what we use to get those layer lines that are really in areas that you can't get with a sander, right? And this stuff is really, really good. So the next thing you're going to want to get is this stuff right here. This is Bob Smith Industries CA glue. It has an accelerator here, and there's two types. This is just the regular one, and then there's one that's called gap filler. This is the extra thick, and then a gap filler is almost like a jelly. You know, that's what you use to fill those big gaps, and this is what I use to join pieces together. It is super strong. People say the CA glue is not good for this stuff, but it's before the CA glue breaks, it's going to delaminate your part. In other words, the layer is going to strip away well before the glue breaks. So you can use this stuff. You don't need to use any special bonding chemicals to put it together, put pieces together, you know. And I also use this to repair the cracks and whatnot. So it, you know, they're never going to come apart again. So, all right, on to the prepping part of the tutorial. So what I do is I get an orbital sander with the 80 grit sandpaper, right? And this orbital sander, it's a variable speed. It's very important that you use a variable speed, because if you use a regular high-speed sander, it's going to melt your part. It's going to create a lot of heat and melt your part. I slow this down to about 3.5, 4, you know, so that way it's slow enough to where it's not going to damage your part, but fast enough, then, you know, faster than you actually doing it with your hand, right? And the other grit I use is, after I use this, is the 220, right? The 220 is what I smooth it right before I spray it with the primer. So I'm going to go ahead and now sand this part. right, so just want to show you guys something with just that little bit of sanding you guys see me do, and I will complete it off screen and then move on to the next phase where I prime this, and then I use that glazing putty to kind of finish it off. Just give you an idea of just this little bit of sanding. Watch this right here. Do you see that? How bad that is? That right there is, it looks like it's a piece of plywood. It's so layered because of the angle it was printed on. Now let me show you the other side. Just from a little bit of printing. So don't be afraid to get at this with an orbital sander. As long as it's variable speed, you can quickly get your parts the way they need to be, you know, with a sander, rather than putting all that work. Of course, you will have to do some work in tight places where you can't get that sander, you know, but it's not going to be that much because you just want to get the big stuff down. The glazing putty is what's going to fill those tiny crevices and print lines in the corners. You want to get rid of print lines on your big open areas, but in the corners, you're going to use that glazing putty, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. All right, we are back. Once you've put about 4 coats of primer on this, you're going to notice that you'll still see a few of the print lines and some of the hard-to-reach areas and whatnot. So, a few of the defects from sanding with the 80 grit sandpaper, maybe some delamination on the edges or whatnot. It's no big deal. That's just part of the whole process. So what you want to do is you want to get this Bondo glazing putty. It's spot glazing putty. It's similar to what a lot of the people have been using around here when they use the wood filler. You just want to put it on your finger and kind of just spread it around wherever there's, you know, that print lines or whatever. Or minor defects or whatever in the print, as well as the little areas where you've joined a piece together. There might have not been a little gap or a little, you know, from the pieces being joined. You want to go ahead and kind of wipe it on there like that. This is just to cover some of the ones that I may have missed, and that's pretty much it. All right, we'll come back when this dries and we'll sand it. All right, we are back. As you can see, we have the, it's pretty much dried, maybe a little damp in some places, but for the most part it is. What you want to do is you want to get some 220 sandpaper, and you just want to keep going over it real lightly. Don't put a lot of pressure, and as you can see, it comes off fairly quickly. So you're going to keep doing this until it's smooth everywhere, up in all the little cracks, right around the seam. You just want to go over it. I wouldn't use orbital sander on this because it may dig in a little bit too deep, and you may see some wet spots come up, but as long as you keep brushing lightly, everything's going to come down to that same level, you know? So, as you can see right here, this part right here that I just did for that short period of time is almost smooth. You're just going to keep going over your whole part. This stuff is amazing for making your parts really smooth and getting rid of print lines. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you. This is what I've already done on the other side. As you can see, I've removed 90% of the glaze putty, because you don't want a whole lot of this stuff on there, because it's not really designed to be a filler. It's just designed to just fill small crevices. So if you got a big clump on it and then you spray over it, that may pop off later. So like I said, you do not use this for filling big gaps and filling big holes. Just small print lines and little tiny pits in your work. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and sand the rest of this, and I'll get back to you guys when I'm done. All right, there it is. We completely sanded everything down. It's really smooth. I might have a few little nicks. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna shoot it with 2 more coats of primer. If there's little pieces that we missed, we would just do a little bit more of that putty on there and just get that little area and shoot it again. But for the most part, I think we're pretty much done. I'm gonna go ahead and primer it, and then I'm gonna move to the studio so with the better lighting so you can see how it turned out. Welcome back to Scavenger Workshop. Normally, when I want this to be really smooth, after I lay the 2 coats of primer on it, I'll sand it with 400 grit sandpaper and then shoot it with my base coat. But because I'm doing a metal look, all I did was just shoot the primer and then shoot the base coat. What that does is it's gonna leave a little bit of orange peel across the surface, which once you add this paint technique I showed in episode 1, it makes it look really cool, like it's actual metal. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this now, and we'll see how it turns out. Probably going to do a little touch up here and there off stream, just so that way I can, really take a good look at it. It's hard to paint on an angle, so that way you guys can see. But let me show you one of the pieces that was completed. Now, this piece here, we finished it, but as you can see, looks really, really, really good. We're going to do a tutorial in part 2 of the helmet, adding rust effects, and if you look really closely in some of these areas, you can see what I mean by the orange peel, making it look like real metal with the little pits and the little nooks and crannies in there. That's because when I put the Bondo glazing putty on, I brushed it with the sandpaper lightly to try and get a little bit of defects in it to make it look more natural, like it is actually metal. So you can see that stuff all done in episode 1. And yeah, this one's pretty much done. Like I said, we're gonna add a few rusty fix. I'm gonna get some lenses for it.